Hey guys. So before we start anything, I just got to say, we look great in our matching hoodies. We got these from our team. Thank you, Alex. You guys know Alex, who is a co-presenter on here. She made us these hoodies. Proud of the
Embroidered,
team.
yeah. It's a quality product. It is. These are awesome.
Yeah, loving wearing the swag. But John, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you guys? How you guys doing?
Doing
Good,
fine.
thanks. Good. All right, yeah, it's good. It's busy at the moment, but a lot of people are caring about cost optimization in the world. Been hearing some great feedback from people who watch the show. So as always, let us know if you have any questions, comments, or email us at costoptimization.com if you're watching us later on. But yeah, let's get into the show. So welcome everyone to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions to help you unlock your spend at AWS. My name is Stephanie Gooch, and I am an optimization architect. Is that right?
I think you got it. Yeah, exactly.
we changed titles, and so I am trying to remember mine. And I help customers every day with the world of CFM. John?
Yeah, and I'm John Massey, also an optimization architect here at AWS, working with our strategic account customers.
Awesome. All right. And thanks for watching. Today, we're going to be talking all about forecasting. So seeing into the future of your spend. But just as a reminder, as I said before, any questions, comments, if you're watching us live, jump on the chat and ask us and we'll try and help. Or if you're watching us later, feel free to email us questions at costoptimization.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment with anything you have to ask. But Jeff is our guest today, a fellow Optics member. Jeff, do you want to give us your 1 minute origin story?
Yeah, happy to be here, Steph. Hey, everybody. So my name is Jeff Dureski. I'm a FinOps commercial architect on the same team along with John and Steph. My origin story is background has primarily been in finance. So I've had roles in corporate finance, regulatory, audit. And then before I came to the team, I worked at Capital One, where I led the cloud finance analytics team. So approaching cost optimization, cloud finance from more of the financial perspective.
Nice. Coming from the finance perspective, I can't speak, is definitely something we are trying to encourage more of so that people can get a broad aspect of kind of coming to the key show, especially. Okay, let's dive into the world of forecasting. So Jeff, do you want to give us a bit of background or a bit of an intro into the world of forecasting for cloud?
Yeah. So, forecasting, there's 1,000 different ways that we can cut that, we can tackle the issue. So today really wanted to focus on kind of the high level end-to-end process of forecasting. So when I think of forecasting from that broad level, there's going to be 3 parts to that. There's your forecasting your workloads. Then there's going to be loading that forecast to your financial system of record, your general ledger. And then there is, how do you explain variances to your forecast? And so, each one of those builds on the other step, and communication will be important throughout that to make sure that what a tech person is forecasting is actually in the system, and then we can explain any variances to that forecast.
And Jeff, I don't want to get ahead of things here, but just maybe to set the stage too, when we're talking about forecasting, are we talking about this just from a mathematical model perspective, or is this talking about kind of accounting for other factors that maybe play into the workloads? Anything maybe you could kind of share from that side?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great point. When we look at forecast, there are the workloads that you as an application owner that you're looking at. You're trying to project out your workload for the next year. What do you have planned for? What might the impact be? But then there are enough central or higher level impacts on those numbers as well that the FinOps team can control if they're looking to expand your savings plan footprint that your developer may not know about. So how do those inputs come into play? If you're focused on just the workloads, how are you making sure you're accounting for any CloudWatch, any of those monitoring services that there may not be someone who owns CloudWatch cost, but it's a cost you need to make sure that comes into your forecast as well as you aggregate it.
Got it. So I just want to key in on one of those words you mentioned there. So like talking about all those different inputs, we're talking about like a bunch of different dimensions that are kind of coming into play and all, kind of resulting in this like, anticipated cost that's coming down the road, not just, hey, growth is like X%. We're looking at it to get, this level at some point in the future, right?
Absolutely, because cloud is it's so dynamic and so decentralized that using just one growth factor trying to apply to every workload, every service is just not gonna have very, very accurate forecast, especially as you get more mature in the cloud. You have more workloads, and you want to be able to drill down and to really have a sense of ownership for the application owners and the developers of those workloads, that they understand what their actions that they're doing impacts the cost of their application.
So, and I know that you did, kind of a role on the finance side, I guess prior to Capital One's like cloud adoption, like in the other world of like kind of on-premises infrastructure, where it's maybe a little bit less dynamic. How is that forecasting different?
The forecasting there, we're picking on your on-prem data center. You need to buy servers, then you have some sort of process through your procurement team where teams can requisition. They need X number of servers, X number of space over the next 6 months or whatever your lead time is. So then when you go to purchase those, you're looking at, I have this server, it's a 3-year life. I'm just going to depreciate it, evenly over 36 months. Oh, my old ones, they're now done. Let's buy, better ones. Let's upgrade. 36 months, they stay flat. And so, far more centralized versus the dynamic cloud where you can spin up, resources instantly and as needed. So it was a different muscle to forecasting, and the importance became communication became far more important when you're trying to build those forecasts. You couldn't just have it centrally.
Got it.
Nice. So I'm looking at the chat. We've got someone checking, have I got a rabbit in my background of the shadow? No, it's just my lighting of my new bookcase with my random stuff all over it. Unfortunately, my angle is trying to get the optics brand, and I've cut off the Funko Pops at the top. So they're out this episode. Okay, so I mean, a lot of what Jeff just talked on is some great content, especially about ownership, CloudWatch, all that kind of stuff. So if you've just heard a few buzzwords and you do want to find out more, I'm just going to push to say we're not going to jump into all those topics today, but if you kind of search on our YouTube channel, you can see all about those things. So great bringing those up. But we were talking, you've hinted a bit about how in comparison to the static infrastructure, you spread that out over costs. Knowing how much that's going to spend is very helpful. So what about if you have new workloads to the cloud? Is there any kind of tools that help developers or finance to calculate that spend upfront?
Yeah, absolutely. And that and what I've seen with other customers is using the AWS Pricing Calculator. That is a huge way to really dig into what those costs might be, and then it can drive the conversation between tech and finance. As you're building that workload, finance can come in and just try to understand, does the ramp make sense? How long is it going to take you to get steady state? Are you going to have a development bubble that it's going to go up and come back down? And so having that tool for what your workload is going to be, and then using that in conversations is huge.
Awesome. Very helpful call out. So I think, do we want to jump into some of the stuff? I mean, we spoke about, so Jeff done a lot of finance work, you mentioned at the start. And when we were talking the other day, you started using all these buzzwords that I didn't know. I come from a dev background, which is probably people know. And so I wanted to kind of go into some of them, if that's okay, and just ask you what some of them mean, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go with the first one. Variance. There's one we hear with forecasting a lot. Do you want to give like a 2-sentence overview of what is variance?
Yeah, so that's going to be for forecast the difference between what you thought it was going to be and what it actually is. So you can have a month over month variance, a month versus versus your forecast actuals. You can have what your variance your prior year. So how much have you grown? And then really it's looking at not only what is the difference, but the why. So that's the important part of, in a monthly business review, monthly finance review, just saying you're up 5% or $10,000, that's the easy part. That's math. The explaining why is it up or down is the hard part.
Awesome. Okay, variance tick. What about, you've mentioned to me kind of general ledger / kind of system of record. If anyone hears that, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that's going to be your basically your set of numbered accounts. So in your financial system of record, you're going to have SAP, Oracle, some sort of system that you're rolling up or aggregating all of your costs, and each account is going to have an account number. So you're going to have a cloud cost account number, a professional services account number, and so when you're loading your forecast to your system of record, you're ultimately taking all of that detail and boiling it down to your account number and then your month. I want to put $10,000 in January, and that's going to be my forecast.
Okay, cool. All right, last one. Prepaid discounts. Now, this probably has a similar wording in AWS, but prepaid discounts, what are you talking about with that?
Yeah, so for that, looking at savings plan, reserved instances, any part where you're actually, prepaying, so you're purchasing something up front and then you're committing to that, so you're getting a discount on those services.
Nice, very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just to jump in as well, Mark just suggested it'd be awesome to have a capacity to import batch RDSs from a CSV. That is a good point, Mark. We will take note of that and then see what we can do and pass that up the chain for you. I'll just make a screenshot of that. Awesome. And one thing I think, John, did you want to mention about this blog post I'm going to pop up here?
I did, yeah. We were just kind of going through Jeff's recent blog post. It's got some good references in there, and I think good starting points for folks that are interested in diving a little bit deeper into the forecasting world. I mean, it's definitely something where I learned quite a bit, kind of reading through that, and benefiting from more of the finance lens, where that's a little bit less of the world that I've been in. So it's good to kind of learn from folks like Jeff.
And the important part when you're looking at forecasting, or with this, with the blog post where I wrote that from, assuming you have a central FinOps team, a cloud center of excellence, is how do you set the timing expectations, the inputs to drive forecasting? And so you need to make sure that everyone's going to be on the same page, from tech side, from finance side, of when do you need the materials in? When do you need to load the forecast, the final one? So you back it up from how many days when you roll up all of these hundreds or thousands of inputs into one number, do you need to review it? And then how do you establish the expectations of materiality? You may not want to forecast every single workload if you've got thousands of them, if 50 or 100 of them are the ones that are driving 80% of your cost. You think of the Pareto principle of focusing on the material services, workloads, however you have those ring-fenced accounts. And then all of the other ones are not going to be material to any variances. So you don't want to spend too many brain cells on those when you can really focus on those ones that matter.
So I'm curious about something there, Jeff, right? So setting that expectation for someone who owns a workload to deliver the forecast, what if it's something that maybe they're not familiar with, or, you want to get them on that same page of reporting with consistency that, other peers might have for their workloads. What are some maybe tips and tricks for either kind of helping to establish the consistency across the organization, or helping someone kind of just get started with being able to deliver a forecast if it's something new for them?
Yeah. So cost visibility is by far the most important part of this. If you know your costs, then you can think of what actions you take. How are they going to influence those costs? But if you don't have consistent cost visibility, if some areas they really understand their cost, other ones they don't because they don't have access or availability, poor tagging, then right away that you're just not starting from that foundational. I understand my cost, so I can then project out the cost. And then as different teams look to forecast, they're all going to be in different levels of maturity. So the conversation is the most important part. Sitting down with that developer, with the application owner, showing them the history over the last 6 months. These have been your top services, your top accounts. What do you have planned? Are you going to focus on modernizing your instances? Are you going to release something in the next 6 months? How might that impact your cost? So the education on the finance side, the knowledge of understanding what questions to ask, and then the developer understanding my actions will have an impact on my costs for the next 6 months. And so it's bringing those two together.
So you mentioned 6 months there. What's like a good time range for someone to be able to forecast out? And then is there, I guess, like different degrees of confidence as that time range extends out? So like, is my 1 year forecast, is it okay to have more wiggle room in that versus, what I'm forecasting out for the next quarter? Just curious on kind of what your experience has been.
Absolutely. So, for many companies, they may use the word budget or outlook as this is our forecast for the next year. So come August, September, October, we're setting it for the following year. That one might be a static number, and then we'll refresh it on some sort of time period. So your central finance team is going to set the timing of when they would expect the forecast. So more of a, where do we actually think we're going to land? We're not going to be static, and what level of detail that forecast is going to be. And so, just as you learn more information, you're updating that forecast. The idea isn't to hammer somebody, if they're off on their forecast. Again, going back to why. What do we know now that we didn't know when we set this? Is there a new initiative? Do we have far more users on that? So going back to the cost visibility and being able to explain your thought process when you set the forecast. And so then you can explain the why and the variance.
Got it. We heard someone mention something recently that kind of lands with what you just mentioned too, where they said the world of cost optimization is like the world of and. So it's metrics and some action, or it's metrics and some explanation for that. And if we look at it just as kind of like a singular thing, then we're probably not going to get the full picture there. But if we know that there was a 5% increase, in the cost, and that's related to, a new workload coming online, that's a little bit different than like organic growth that we might see with something else. So I just think that that's kind of interesting to hear that come up now. I was curious about something else that was in the blog post where you mentioned like, iterate. If someone comes to you the forecast and it is wrong, or maybe it's off or outside of a certain range, like how do you react to that? And I guess what is a little bit of that process of like iterating on that change? I'm curious about that from your perspective too.
Yeah, I guess, and that's where asking the question. So if I'm on the finance side and someone comes to me with here's what I expect from the forecast, and I'm hearing like, wow, you say you're going to be flat, but everything you're telling someplace else is no, we have all this dev work, we have all of these releases. One of those things can't be true unless you're modernizing, so maybe it is. As we're looking to that, we're modernizing, so we expect to be flat. And so having that conversation, and then as a central team, you could also look as almost a challenger model. So let's assume you have all of these applications or workloads that have been forecasted. You've aggregate them. You come to a number, from a ground up perspective. Your central team, your finance team, they may look at it from a top down. Here's been our run rate. Let's annualize that run rate. We know that we have these cost optimizations, and we're saying it's going to cause a 5%, drop in EC2. So you start building from the top down of what are all the initiatives that we know of that are going on. How do those look, and are there areas that are skewed? So, if they come together, pretty closely, then, that's great. That means, the inputs are taking into account all of those initiatives. But if the ground up is significantly higher than the top down, and you realize, have you factored in, this, modernization that we are targeting for this year, or you didn't realize that we're looking to go from a 60 to 70% savings plan footprint increase, which is going to drive X number of, savings. And so having both of those together then will let you, really have that understanding and make sure that all inputs are accounted for.
So with this kind of range of inputs and I guess expected variance, when someone's forecasting, their cost for a specific workload, should that be just $1 value, or should that be a range?
So ultimately, there's going to have to be a dollar value inputted in, in your system of record. So you're not going to put a range in there. But as you're aggregating everything up, that's where the conversations are going to happen. There may be an agreement. Yes, we know we have to put in, $10 for it this month, but we're looking at there could be some variance based on these factors. Now, when we get to that month, what is that variance? Oh, here's what happened. So, finance is looking for a final number to put into the system, but the conversations in that kind of range or cone of potential cost is something that's going to be very important.
Nice. I'm just going to jump in. As we can all tell, forecasting of finance, not my forte. So these two are having a great chat. I'm just listening. Just a couple of things I wanted to pull up. There's a CFO of finance and boarding event that you can go to. So if you're listening and you're in finance department, you want to learn more, and there's some official training that Amazon is doing in a couple of weeks. So recommend checking that out. And then we've got some questions. So from Matty, for establishing a common cost language, would you suggest having a central document for teams to refer to, or any best practices? Jeff?
Yeah, so that the common cost language, that was one of the terms in the blog, is basically answering the question, if you ask tech and finance, what are we spending on cloud? Are they giving you the same number? And if they're not, if there are variances to that, understanding what those are going to be. So as an example, if you want your developers to only focus on, workloads on demand pricing, don't worry about savings plans. Your central team, we're going to focus on those. You just focus on the growth, what instances. Then this, finance team comes over the top and will, apply what that discount is going to be based on, the history of the savings plan benefit. And so just making sure that you're not talking past each other, that, if the developer was thinking they were going to use it with savings plan benefit, finance didn't realize they were. Now you're double counting those. You're going to have undershoot your forecast. And so having kind of kickoff meetings for the forecasting season. All right, we're going into forecasting season. These are the expectations from a timing perspective, from any inputs, and then right here, the central document. This is what we expect. Keep savings plan benefits flat. Expect a 10% increase in benefit. Any of those that you need to make sure people incorporate would be, that'd be a great time from those kickoff meetings.
John, anything to add?
No, I just want to make sure I kind of heard that correct, Jeff. So you were talking about like going back to like on-demand pricing, and maybe what I'm hearing there is that maybe there's like a normalization approach that you can take where, take out some of those variances that you were talking about before, and that way, a finance team can look at it, kind of removing some assumptions that maybe the developers have made about like coverage with purchase options, normalize it to some unit, everyone's on the same page, and then finance can take that and kind of layer on pieces on top. Am I kind of playing that back right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one common thing in finance is kind of a waterfall chart of here's where we were, here's what our projected budget is going to be. What is the variance walk? So you may say, oh, we assume 5% organic growth, and then we have an additional growth of new workloads. Oh, but we're going to have a benefit of savings plan. We're going to expand our savings plan footprint, and so being able to take those pieces out of there and understand, growth versus central, savings plan RI benefits. And you just want to make sure everyone's on the same page of how to incorporate those.
Yeah. And also, I'm going to go for like a very literal answer. It might be worth, if you're looking into having these conversations between dev and finance, creating some kind of FAQ or frequently asked questions section or document on if you're using Confluence or any kind of document, other ones, whatever you're using, just so that if there are questions that are commonly happening, make a note of them and then have a place to refer people to, or even refer them to a link to an episode of Keys and say like, go watch this, and it hopefully might make more sense. But having it so that that kind of not speaking the same language, the constant clashing of different teams having to re-explain every single time can be quite annoying for both parts of finance. Finance is doing the same thing to tech is doing the same thing to finance. That's not going to be kind of collaborative and stuff like that. So maybe take the time to devise a list of questions and kind of have appropriate answers that make sense in both kind of languages. I'm just going to jump in with a question from Mark. So I think I'll summarize, but do you recommend having a specific AWS organization or OU to manage and deploy cost-related resources and stack? Is it better to have a separation for kind of current and future? I'm going to jump in on that one and say, if you're deploying any kind of solution or tool, homegrown or otherwise, to manage and review your costs, I recommend deploying it into a centralized cost account, data collect account, FinOps account, whatever you want to call it. The main kind of 3 reasons I have for that is not doing it in the main billing account means that you kind of take away a risk, because normally that is a very powerful account. So take people out of there. Number 2, it means that you can give access to finance teams or to individual kind of FinOps teams directly, so they have their own ownership of an account and makes it more powerful. And you can bring data in across from everywhere else. You can copy the cur over, you can bring in metadata and make it into a kind of full-fledged account for things like the intelligence dashboards. But also the last one is very niche, well, not niche, but very specific. If you deploy any of the well-architected labs, a lot of them run on Lambda functions. And if you buy savings plans, they can be applied to Lambda functions. So if you have them in the same account that you purchase, they will apply to those Lambda functions first before kind of any EC2. So you might be missing out on a bit of savings. So it is just kind of a little savings thing. So I recommend doing that. All right. So we have 2 minutes left. Jeff, any kind of final bits you want to cover just to say actually, I want to ask you something instead of giving you just open forum. As a dev, if I come to you and I want like 2 sentences maybe, why do you care about forecasting? Like, why should you expect devs to actually help and be kind of proactive in giving you this information? What would you say?
The ownership and efficiency. If you're a dev, you're looking to build out your applications, your workloads. You want to be as efficient as possible with those workloads. And there's the understanding that if resources become constrained and I need to look at how are we allocating any budget, making sure that we're the most efficient and that we can speak to what those workloads are doing, how they're going to grow, how we're going to drive the business is extremely important. And at the end of the day, there is that finance number that has to be rolled up into the budget. There's really no way around that, unfortunately.
Perfect. All right, brilliant. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Jeff, thanks for coming on. Next week, we are talking all about row-level security and how to apply it to the cloud intelligence dashboards. So check out us next week for that. And yeah, see you all then, and have a good rest of your day. Bye, guys.
See ya.